It should be a very simple, easy episode. Like, it's
20
gonna
minutes
be.
in. So, if you do the physics on...
If you multiply the ratio of kid to adult, and the fun ratio that comes out of that is X plus, if X being, kids under the age of 3, yeah, we should make that happen.
Sure.
Sure.
All right. You good to go? Let's talk to our Patreons.
Hey there, patrons, Patreon.
Patreons. What is that? That is Looney Tunes, right?
Remix Patreon. Like that? That was pretty good, wasn't it?
We should charge
That's
them
pretty
more a
good.
month just for that.
That was amazing.
That was amazing. Well, we're delirious, so that's where we're at right now.
I mean, let's be honest. I think everybody's delirious. Everybody's stir crazy. Everybody's like a little bit nutty. But it's part of quarantine.
It's part of quarantine.
Did I do my quarantine joke at the end of the last episode?
Yes, you did. Do you have another one?
No, I was going to just do that one.
You can't do it again.
Because
Dan.
how
We
many
need some
people
new
have heard
material.
that one, though? I bet you people probably haven't heard that one because they probably didn't listen to the very end. Did you,
Maybe.
Patreons?
But you should probably stop rocking back and forth like that because it's going to be like this.
Oh, yeah, right. Should we get into this awesome episode coming up?
I think we should. Do you have your drink?
I don't have a drink. But I am watching my kid freak out.
Uh-oh.
Come on, get your pacifier, kid. Come on.
I hear her.
Well, let me run up and give her a pacifier back.
Go. I will just talk to everybody as normal. This is the second episode where this has happened. Though I think the first time it was because he was getting a drink. I don't know. This is where we're at, guys. I hope y'all are doing okay. This is certainly an interesting chapter of life, to say the least. Beyond everything, I hope all of you guys are staying healthy and staying safe throughout this. I know it is April 1st actually here right now, and Pennsylvania just issued a statewide stay-at-home, which I don't know how that was different than what we were doing before, to be totally honest, but we're now officially staying at home. We've been in that category for a while now, but it's just really interesting. It's really, really interesting. Things are changing really fast, and we're just trying to keep up with it, but that's kind of where we're at. Dan's taking care of babies, but I'm excited for this episode. Now I'm officially talking to myself. No, I'm talking to you guys. That's what we're going to say. I'm talking to you guys. Speaking of babies, we're going to be talking about kids in this episode, so it should be fun. Although if you are a parent right now and you are home with the kiddos, it might not be as all butterflies and rainbows as it is in the movies. Because kids can require a lot of energy, especially right now because everything is so full-time. So crazy. Oh, here comes Dan. I hear him coming, maybe.
Here I am.
There he is.
All right, let's just hope that Regina Bina is down. I put her in the swing, so I don't know how long it's going to last. But we'll see. Worst case scenario is I just need to bring her down here and put her in the background.
There you go. Talk really fast.
All right.
So
Yeah.
we're talking about kids this episode.
Okay. All right. Shall we make it happen? I really enjoyed it listening to you as I was up there. You talking. It was pretty funny. All right. And in 10, 5, never going to get old. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey,
And
Ringers,
we're live. Sorry.
Hey, Ringers, welcome. Stop it. Come on.
Leaving this in. Hey, Ringers.
Hey, Ringers, welcome to episode 83 of the Put a Ring on It podcast. Dan, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room, obviously.
Yeah.
Everybody's under lock and key. Many people are under lock and key. I'm sure there's there's other states that are not, but we're all under quarantine, and we got a stay at home order here in Pennsylvania, and we're all just hanging out. Getting a little stir crazy, but looking at that silver lining that I get to spend time with my family and enjoy that. So
Right.
it's awesome.
It's an everyday roller coaster of emotions over here, of being like amped up, positive, motivated, charged, terrified, worried, what's happening, confused. And we just keep riding that wave. And I feel like as long as I keep swinging back from the anxious to the optimistic, that I'm doing okay. So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. Hope you guys all out there are hanging in there and doing okay as well. It's it's a crazy time. I actually just read a little article from a physiologist who just talked about like things that you should do to keep yourself kind of not going stir crazy. And it was very simple things like keeping a routine, making sure you get outside no matter what for 30 minutes a day, whether that's like sitting on your back porch or, I mean, in the city, it's very tough. It can be very tough to social distance and still be, 6 feet away from everybody and stuff. But, maybe it's a roof deck or just getting outside for a couple minutes, opening the window. Oh, one of the best things ever is when it's a really nice day out, sitting next to a window and reading a book. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
So
so underrated, right? It's not one of the things you automatically think about that, what would feel really good right now? It's just opening a window. But do it and just see it like change you physically in how you're feeling. Yep. Well, more mentally, I guess, but yeah.
And there's like, you should definitely stand in front of the mirror every day and say, I am strong. I am awesome. I do that every morning. I'm smart.
We watched Cool Runnings the other day because we obviously have Disney Plus now. We watched Cool Runnings the other day, and what does Yul Brynner say to Junior?
I know.
He says, pride, power, right? That's that one?
I see pride.
Yeah.
I see power. I see a badass
a badass mother who don't take no crap from nobody.
No crap off of nobody. Yeah. That's awesome.
I love that movie so much. We watched it with the little guy, and he actually really liked it too, which filled my heart a little bit. And then we started realizing that for when the movie came out in the early 90s, like where all those people are now, it's just bizarre. So
still one of the best lines in that whole movie is when Yul Brynner is pushing Senka up against the wall. He's like, how about I kick your butt? And Senka's like, how about I draw a line down the middle of your head so it looks like a butt? So good. Every time it gets me. Butts are funny.
Oh yeah, the 8-year-old of the house loves butt jokes now, so that I think we won him over just with that line alone. So
yeah, I was changing Regina's diaper, who's our 8-month-old daughter, and she's very chunky. Like she's got lots of rolls and stuff on her. It's really funny, and she rolled over onto her belly and like put her arms down and was like pushing away, and she's just bare butt, and I just laughed because there's just like those bare butt chunky leg thighs, and it was just so hilarious. And I FaceTime my mom to show her because baby butts are really funny, and my mom who had double knee surgery like 2 months ago is like also cooped up, so it just made her day and all that stuff. But so I mean that's a perfect segue. I was just talking about kids. Kids are awesome. Baby butts are funny. Let's talk about kids at weddings.
Yeah, so we're obviously not ignorant to what's going on in the world, but we wanted to continue bringing you guys stuff that we thought might be helpful as you go forward and plan your wedding. And a factor in your day might be children. So we're going to talk about kids today. Not from a parent point of view, from a couple hosting event and at what capacity you want to have kids at your wedding, right? So I think a natural starting point is when you're thinking about kids, it kind of starts maybe with the idea of, do we want to have children in our wedding party, right? Do we want to have flower girls, ring bearers, junior bridesmen, junior groomsmen, all those different things? So I thought, Dan, it'd be helpful if we start by kind of breaking down where those roles typically fall for the ages of those kids.
So what we're going to do, we're going to break it down now. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Okay. You can go ahead. You looked like you took a deep breath. You sound like you were ready to go. Go ahead.
No. By all means, you're allowed to talk whenever you like, Dan. This is your podcast too.
It is my podcast too. I do have some things to add to this one.
I know that baby butts are cute.
The baby butts are cute. That's my addition to this episode. Okay, all right. Let's start here. Junior bridesmaids and junior groomsmen, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's a pretty normal addition. That I mean, you also said ring bearers, flower girls, or whatever, but we can talk about junior bridesmaids, junior groomsmen. I think that obviously they're best for like ages 8 to 16. Is that
Yeah.
what you would agree with?
Yes, that is what I would agree with, because I think any younger than 8 and you're more in Flower Girl Ring Bearer territory, and older than 16 and there probably should just be a full-fledged bridesmaid or groomsman. That said, as with everything we talk about in this podcast, you do what makes sense to you. I think it just, you want to watch that you're maybe not making somebody who's 12 in a category that is too young for them per se. Right. Though also feel free to make up your own names is where I'm at with all of this too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I often wonder, like, why is there a distinction of a junior bridesmaid? Like, what's the purpose of that? Do you know?
Well, I think at a certain age, if we're talking about a young girl, a flower girl is such a cutesy tootsy name, and after a certain age, I think she may feel like she wants to be more part of the bridesmaids themselves, but obviously she's still a little bit too young for that. So I think giving the title of junior in front of it gives them a clear distinction that, like, hey, you're not a kid no more. Like, you're a cool tween. You know what I mean? But doesn't make them feel like a kiddie, you know, who's like not getting, you know, enough privileges, but also doesn't necessarily give them as much responsibility as they would if they were perhaps a full-fledged bridesmaid and groomsman. So that's kind of where I stand. But again, I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. I do think, though, you want to watch how old they are so that you're, you know, titling them in a way that makes them feel really good too. You know?
Yeah, I think the next two should be lumped together because they're obviously the most common way to include kids in the wedding, and that's ring bears and flower girls.
I have a fun
Do you see
story.
How I Met Your Mother?
I don't think so. Well, I have, but nothing's coming up in my brain.
A ring bear? It's like
Gotcha.
Bear, like anyway.
Gotcha.
Anybody out there is maybe laughing a little bit about the ring bear, bearer, and flower girls.
For what wedding was that?
I forget what wedding it was, but we're not going to get into it because I can't. Okay. It's too far long ago.
So it's sparking some sort of memory in your brain. I know I had one couple who told the young guy in their family who was going to be a ring bearer, they told him he's going to be a ring bearer, and he heard ring bear and just thought he was going to be wearing a bear suit. So this little guy was very excited, and we had to kind of follow through to a certain extent on getting this dude a bear suit. So it was very sweet. But ring bearers, flower girls, this is a role that's usually best suited for children ages 4 to 8. If you go younger than that, bless your heart. I will say, and perhaps Dan can also add to this as a parent of children under the age of 4, kids are unpredictable at any age for sure, but even the most well-behaved child at the age of 1, 2, or 3, it's a lot to give them a specific role when it comes to your day itself, and in terms of asking them to smile for photos and to walk down an aisle and to hold a thing and to do the this and to do the that. It's a lot to ask of them. And by nature, I would say most kids, some kids handle it well. Some kids, it's like, it's not well timed. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I mean, you probably have a million stories about this as well, but like you know, I've seen ring bearers be called ring security. Have you ever seen this one where they like wear sunglasses and they put like a little like earpiece in, they carry a little fake safe down with rings in it. But definitely not recommended to put, and I can't remember if you just said this or not, but not recommended to actually have people carry the rings down. I have occasionally seen like even like very happy-go-lucky, outgoing kids totally lose their minds right before they're about to walk down the aisle and take the pillow and chuck it 50 yards. And you're like, wow, how did that kid throw that pillow 50 yards? But they did, and the real rings were tied to that. And it was something. So no real rings, and even the most sweetest of kids can turn a little crazy.
Yeah, and that's allowed, right? But ring bearers, I don't recommend giving them real rings. More often than not, whatever you see, they are carrying fake rings. By and large, that is the thing that happens. Obviously, with flower girls, they can toss petals, but they don't have to. They can just carry a beautiful little bouquet, or they can have like a flower crown. It's really up to you, whatever they want to do. I think at the end of the day, it's important to remember that you, as the couple, will not be able to be responsible for those little humans. So if both parents are in the wedding party and the child needs more hands-on care, it's going to be very difficult for those parents to kind of balance all of their responsibilities for the day. So it's usually best if one or both of the parents are not in the wedding party, or can like step aside without there being too much of a shift, so that you have some sort of a parent there, or sometimes it could be a grandparent or a nanny. We've seen a bunch of different things, but ultimately there needs to be an able-bodied person, and that includes grandparents, that's attending, that can kind of scoop in and help. Now, I will say on the grandparent front, if the grandparent is also one of your parents, pick a different grandparent, because you don't want your parent to miss out on your wedding or a special moment because they're trying to take care of their grandchild, because that's a tough thing to decide between right there for any grandparent, I think. So yeah.
One of the things I think that I've seen to be really helpful is not letting the kids hang out. Like you're going to know your nieces, nephews, cousins, kids, whoever they are, whoever this relationship of this kid is, you're going to know that a little bit. But I'd really suggest bringing them as close as possible to kind of when they're supposed to go down the aisle, right? Like not letting them drag out all morning. Let them like do their normal routine. Let them have a normal-ish day, and then kind of bring out the time when they have to perform, right? Because little kids they soak up energy, right? Like they soak up the vibes of everybody in the room, and it's interesting how like if things are going awry, how little kids can assume that, and you just see them like they're totally different for the first couple hours of the day, and then all of a sudden things get real crazy like they normally do right before you're about to, like, the hustle and bustle happens, you're about to leave and all that stuff, and all of a sudden the kid, like a normal person, can handle that. They're just like, all right, we gotta make this happen, we're gonna go downstairs and it's gonna happen. And kids are just like, what? We're not playing cars anymore? Like, then all of a sudden they've got to go, you gotta give them, and like they just don't want to listen, right? So allow them to have as much time in the morning or a time before the ceremony to be just themselves. Maybe somebody else is with them all morning and they just bring them to the ceremony spot, right? And then they kind of bring them there, let them kind of like walk down the aisle and keep it really simple. Huge tip.
No, for sure. And depending on their age, nap time can be a factor. For most children, up to a certain age, they have a regular nap. And if you're not a parent, I think it's super normal to totally forget about that factor. So talk to that parent, say, when is their nap time normally? If you can work around it, go for it. Obviously, I wouldn't say change your entire wedding to accommodate the nap time of the kiddo, but maybe keep in mind that maybe they won't be there for whatever time that nap time is. Like maybe they need to walk down the aisle and then someone needs to scoop them up and take them out to the car for a nap for a little bit. All of that is totally okay, but you need to be mindful of it. Most kids, some kids I've seen power through nap times, but it's always come back with some sort of repercussion, like karma later in the night, where they're suddenly screaming and not happy because that's part of their routine. So another thing I think that couples often don't think about if they're not a parent is, does that child need a car seat in the limo or shuttle that's being taken? Off the record, I don't know that this can be off the record, but I've certainly seen it done where the kids have not had a car seat. I don't know if you've seen that, Dan, but that's very much a parent call. Some parents are okay with it. Some parents are very much not okay with it, but definitely something to keep in mind.
And again, that's assuming that, like, they're with you all morning or whatever. Again, try to have them not, like, it's just one more thing for you to remember and think about, a limo, car seat, all that stuff.
Right, exactly. And it's like great to think like you want to be inclusive with them, that including them in as much as you can. But what Dan said before about giving them a space to maintain as much normalcy as possible will be far more beneficial for them, that when the time they are spending with you, they're like present and they're somewhat clear and focused, versus trying to spread that out across the entire day just for the sake of them being included throughout the entire day. So
yeah, for sure. Okay. For sure. Well, do you have something? Go ahead. I'll let you go.
I was going to talk about the next thing, but go ahead.
Nope. I got one thing then.
Okay.
The other thing is, when you've got little ones, if it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, any in that range, after a certain point, say it's after the ceremony, right? Like after they've done their real duty of walking down the aisle and putting the flowers out or carrying the rings or whatever, you can't expect much of them, right? Like there's sometimes, like many times you're trying to, after the ceremony, to get pictures or whatever, and the wedding party and all that stuff. And it's just like, if the ceremony's already been a half hour or an hour, and then you're like waiting for the kids to kind of hang out, and they've got to hang out and wait for other family pictures and all that stuff to happen. It's very difficult for a lot of kiddos to hang for that long and then stand still for a picture. And all I can think about is the royal wedding. Will and Kate, one of the first ones, or was it Harry and Meghan? I can't remember. I think it was the first one, Will and Kate, where there's this, like, you know, it's a royal wedding. It's very prim and proper and fancy, but yet like the professional pictures of all the little page boys and flower girls, there's like two flower girls, like one's not wearing a crown and she's like looking off to the side, like they're kids, right? And even in this very fancy setting, the kids are still going to be kids. So to consider them like off duty, right? Like, you know, if you can get something out of them, awesome, but you know, don't let it shatter your dreams if you can't have your flower girls and ring bears in your pictures because they freaked out.
Yeah, I think anytime you're talking about those young kids, it's just you want to be mindful of kind of what they're going through. And even a well-behaved child is going to have an off day, and they just going to want mommy or daddy or, you know, somebody at that point. I want to share. So when I was 13, my sister got married, and it was a very interesting experience for me because I was 13. My sister was getting married. My sister was much older than me, way older than me. My sister was in her mid-20s, so all of her wedding party was also in her mid-20s. And my sister's military wedding party was a lot of military people. And I will say that as a 13-year-old who was terrified of most life experiences, it was very interesting for me because the people in her wedding party were like trying to make it okay if I drink and like sneak alcohol and do all this stuff. At 13, that was like intense, but I could easily see that happening even more so with a kid who's like in their late teens kind of thing. So definitely kind of exude caution when you're dealing with teenagers who are unsupervised and around alcohol, because you don't want to end up in a situation where they're having this really wacky experience. I did not. But it was like, my mom was so mad at them because I told my mom. Oh my goodness, it was so crazy.
You would tell your mom. That's hilarious.
I would tell my mom. I was 13 and scared out of my mind. Oh my God, it was brutal. But
oh man.
But for real though, like I didn't drink until I was after 21. So my like relationship with alcohol, especially at that age, was like not going to happen. I was not a curious child. I was like so straight and narrow. You couldn't bend me to save my life. So that's, again, my experience with it. But ultimately, it's just really make sure that you're aware of that, because every child's going to go through that differently. As a 34-year-old person, that experience has very much stuck with me, obviously, since I still remember it.
Very traumatized.
21 years later. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. I wanted to mention it. So did I overshare? Really was that too much?
No. I mean, it happens all the time. Like, I've definitely seen it like happening at weddings that I'm at. I remember being at my cousin's wedding, and I was a groomsman in that wedding, and one of my oldest cousins being like, all right, table number 9. That's where, like, because it was a family wedding. My parents were there. Everybody was there. I can remember it was like 15 or 16 or something like that. But I remember like having like a whiskey sour from like the whiskey sour fountain, right? Yeah, I remember this. And, so this is 20 years ago, basically. And I remember my cousin Brad being like, all right, just don't drink the whole drink, and then like drink it down to halfway, and then I'll keep putting new whiskey sours by table number 9. And I just would walk over and pick one up like right by the table number 9 sign. And my mom just had it for like, probably had like 2 or something. I don't know. They didn't taste very good, but right. It was like, oh, my cousin, like my older cousins, being cool and like, helping me out. I don't know. It was really funny, but yeah, that kind of stuff happens all the time.
See, so there's 2 very different experiences. Dan was like cool and rolled with it, and I was scared out of my mind and told on my mom.
That sounds like not much has changed.
Right? That is so true. I still don't really drink.
So true.
So true.
Oh goodness. Anyway, now we're really oversharing.
Now we're really oversharing. That's true. It's the times right now, right? We're all a little loopy. But so that is like if you're planning on having kids in your wedding party. I think when it comes to having kids in your wedding party, there's a lot to consider. On the other side of it is whether you even want to have kids at your wedding at all.
Yep.
This is where I feel strongly that you're allowed to decide on the type of event you'd like to host and who is and isn't invited, right? This is where you want to take into account what your family and friends are like. Are they a super rowdy bunch? Is it a family that has a ton of kids that by saying, okay, kids aren't inviting, you're able to like cut 30% of your total guest list to get into a budget that you're more comfortable with? There's a whole lot of factors that come into play when you need to decide, what you want to do.
Yeah, you'll get flack for this too. Like somebody's going to throw something at you a little bit. It might just be one person. It might be 10, right? But it is your wedding. You get to choose whatever the heck you want. But I also think that there's another side of this that people don't talk about a lot. And that's like when we put the feelers out when Rachel and I were getting married, like what people wanted, right? And the vast majority of my cousins, some of them couldn't make it because they couldn't get babysitters or whatever. And that's okay. And they said it was okay and they had other plans. But one of the things that a lot of my cousins and aunts and uncles and stuff said is they're like, awesome. It's a night out for us. We'll gladly take a night out, away from our kiddos and be able to recharge and fill our love tanks and stuff. Right. Like Rachel and I are talking about that right now. Right. Like don't get, things are real crazy around here, but we keep saying like, man, after this gets out of here, we need to have a date night. Right.
Yep.
And I think if you don't have kids, like, it gets rough. It can be tough and it's rough and it's tough. And I'll blow your house down. I'll huff and I'll puff. But yeah, it can be really difficult. But I would say like make the decision and stick with it. And remember that like a lot of people will be very thankful and very happy to have a night out where they can party and not have to think about kids and just enjoy themselves and fill their own love tanks.
For sure. And this is where we got into this in episode 77, where we started, Dan, this is when you were out doing God knows what. You were just off vacationing and gallivanting. Yes. So episode 77, we talked about how to set boundaries while planning your wedding with Berlin Martin, who's a wonderful wedding planner friend of mine. We got into this quite a bit as far as maybe ways you can respond, all the different things about it. So I won't get into that too much here now, but episode 77 is definitely a good one if you're kind of like trying to navigate this a little bit. But yeah, it is very much your choice. And I think just the same as you're allowed to make that choice as to whether you want to have kids or not, you have to respect the choice of your guest as to whether or not they're able to attend or want to attend because of that choice. So it's just a respect on both sides of the street, no hard feelings either way. And it's all good. I don't think you should hold it against anybody if they say, unfortunately, we can't come if kids aren't able to come. Great. We'll love you. We love you. We'll miss you. We'll celebrate from afar type thing. So I do think it's okay if you kind of go the route of saying, though I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Dan, if you go the route of saying the only children you want to have at the wedding is those that are specifically in your wedding party, kind of making that the clear cutoff. But how do you feel about that? Do you think it should be across the board, or do you think it's okay to like allow VIP kids to come?
I think you're allowed to have VIP kids to come because that's what we did at our wedding. We had my niece. I have two nieces and a nephew. And I'm trying to think. Liam was not there, which is my nephew. But my niece Addison was the flower girl, and then my other niece was a bridesmaid. I think it was actually a junior bridesmaid. And so they were the only kiddos at the wedding. And it was because, they were in the wedding. They took part in the wedding. I think Addison was 6 maybe or something like that. So yeah, but that was it. That was the line we drew. Nobody else. And everybody was fine with that. Generally speaking, everybody was fine with that. Some people couldn't make it because they couldn't find babysitters, like I said. But yeah, that was our line.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to sort of make that exemption, that rule. But otherwise, past that, I would say that what goes for one family should probably apply to all outside of the wedding party that you have. I don't think it's good to invite some kids but not others without there being like a clear role. And I don't know if that's like a closed-minded way of thinking, but I think it gives you a very clear reason why those children are invited. But I would say decide on a rule and stick to it, whether that means kids 8 up 8 and up are allowed, or kids 16 and up are allowed, or no one under 21, whatever it is. I just think give yourself some sort of rule to stick with and kind of go from there.
Yep. And the opposite is if you just want to have all kids and like, don't care, by all means have it. Some of the craziest, funniest weddings I've ever been to is where there was literally like 30 little kids running around, right? It's a different vibe, for sure.
I was just going to say that.
But it's still fun, right? Like kids say the darndest things. They're real wacky. You never quite know. Like I remember shooting like traditional, I can't remember what kind of ceremony it was, but I was sitting like in the aisle, and ring bearer just got up like from one pew and walked like across the front of everybody, and just like stopped in the middle while like vows and everything were going on, stopped in the middle, like looked up at everybody, and then just like turned and kept walking and went over to somebody else, right? Like very like not somber, but like very like meaningful, like quiet part of the ceremony. He just was like, like just walking along, like, just being a little big man. It was so funny. Everybody laughed, and it was a great moment. And a couple still talks about it,
Kids at that age lack such a special self-awareness that I almost wish I sort of wish we still had, because now we're like so aware of what we do, and we don't want to, well, at least this is me. I don't want to break the rules, and I want to follow the order and all of that. And kids are just like, whatever, I'm going to do what I want when I want, and chase me. I don't know.
Here's my belly. I'm going to stick it out. Here's my belly. Blah.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah. Kids can be at the wedding too, if you want to just say, hey, all kids are coming.
Right. Exactly. Time out. Do I still have you? You're still there, right?
What do you mean?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Sorry. It just like minimized the screen, and it almost looked like it shut down, but I think we're good. Timer's still going and all of that. So anyway, plowing on. Okay.
I can make the transition here.
Okay. So let's talk about if you are having kids at the wedding, some things that we may want to think about, right?
Yep. Yeah, for sure. So if you are having kids about the wedding, and this is coming from a dad who now has, a 4-year-old and 2 8-month-olds, you really, and we talked about this in the beginning of the episode, but you really have to think about their experience, right? Their experience from, what are you looking at me?
I thought she's 3. She's 3, right?
Well, she's going to be 4 in June.
Okay. Phew. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just rounding up. It's because we're close, right? Like,
sure. But I just had a moment
I feel
where
like
I was like,
more 3 than 4. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or you mean more 4
or
more
4 than 3.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Gonna make sure I cut this part out.
Sorry.
So yeah, that's all good. You're just like,
Wait, this sounds like math.
Math, brain. Does he?
See, I told you halfway through this is going to get to a complicated episode, and we're already doing math.
Yeah, that's all good. Yeah, exactly. If you are having kids at the wedding, you definitely have to think about their experience, right? Like, and this is coming from a guy who has, a 4-year-old, a 3.75 month old, and 2 8-month-old twins. And I can tell you again, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning of the episode, but really simple things like activities for them to do. Number one, like can your vendor, or not your vendor, your caterer, provide them some kind of a kid's meal, right? And maybe ask the parents, like, hey, what is your kid like, right? Mac and cheese, probably something that the kid will like, because the last thing you want is to have a kiddo who's like not able to eat anything or won't eat the chicken cordon bleu that's sitting out there. I don't know.
That is such an old school dish you just went to.
It is such an old school thing. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Chicken piccata. But yeah, like just very simple things for kids go a long way.
Yeah, I recently had a couple ask me if they should do kids meals or if they should just like not do a meal for kids and just let the child eat off their parents' plate. And I flat out told them, and I will tell you guys this too, 100% ask the parent first. For some parents, that's okay. For others, that child needs its own meal, and that's really an important thing. I don't think it's fair to say that we're not going to give that person a meal, that guest a meal, just the same as you wouldn't do that to anybody else. Obviously, you don't want to be spending money on things that you don't need to, but it is really super important to make sure those kids are fed and not just assume that they can just eat whatever it is off of their parents' plate. Right. But there's other things you can do too, besides just their meal. Maybe you can do like a really fun, non-alcoholic, fancy drink that's just for them, right? Sometimes just like a simple Shirley Temple can make it feel like an extra special occasion. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Something that is fun and different and maybe has sugar in it because why not? They're going to be dancing all night anyway.
Yeah, like I remember seeing it was like an apple juice in like a fancy plastic martini glass with pineapple on the side. Like that was it. Like it wasn't anything fancy. But yeah, it was really cute and sweet. And then like the kids like walking around like, oh, look at my, like, you know, they're just like feel special, right? And kids, when they feel special, have a better time, and they act a nice way that also makes everybody else have a better time.
Right. It tells them, hey, this is like a little bit of a fancier event. I just think it's a really, really fun thing. I love the idea of what you said about activities. Dan, have you seen any like fun activities that couples have done for kids at the wedding?
Yep. I saw it a long time ago. I thought it was really sweet. So instead of, you know how like, you know, people have those, it's like a picture frame or like a wood board or something where like people can sign their names. This was like a roll of paper, like a 3-foot tall roll of paper that was like maybe 10 feet long. And it was like it looked a lot like sidewalk chalk, like, you know, kids like on top of this big piece of paper, and they were writing and making drawings or whatever, but it wasn't just for kids. The kids were encouraged to like be on it and make, you know, rainbows and write little notes to the couple, but they also had crayons and markers and whatever out for families and people and wedding guests to be able to write on this big giant thing as well. So it kind of killed two birds with one stone. It was a coloring book kind of activity for kids to do, to draw pictures and be silly. And it also doubled as like a very sweet thing that people or the couple could save for later, both like these little kid drawings and parents and kids and wedding guests also doing silly and fun things that they couldn't do if it's on this nice, prim, proper, beautiful frame.
I love that. I think that's super sweet.
It was adorable.
I love that. I've definitely seen coloring books are kind of a very popular thing to have at maybe their seat for when they sit down, like coloring books with some crayons, I think is really cool. I've also seen scavenger hunts where you give them you give them a disposable camera and a list of things to kind of go throughout the room or, you know, and capture, whether it's like you want to capture a flower, you want to capture somebody kissing, somebody dancing, somebody wearing red, things like that just keeps them busy. Awesome. And gives them an activity, an entertainment for the night. I just think that's a ton of fun for the kiddos.
Photo scavenger hunt is such a funny and smart idea. I love that. Mm-hmm. Huh. Cool.
And then you get the photos from the camera and you see these like really funny photos through the eyes of them. And it's just a really sweet thing. I've also seen it with the Polaroid cameras too, though those can get a little bit more, expensive just by nature. So something else that I think is really important that maybe there's not enough talk about is giving them a room that's less loud for them to play in. Dan, you know this as a parent. It's something I certainly did not know until I was a parent, that super loud speakers are terrible for kids' ears, especially the babies. I've been going, obviously I've been going to weddings, but the weddings that I've been part of lately, it is really nice to see more and more the parents that have sound protection on their super young ones, if those young ones are still involved at the reception. But there's like a ton of research as a wedding professional that Dan and I, like we know about, because we're constantly in these really loud environments and it's really damaging for our ears long term. So Dan, I don't know if you do you wear
earplugs?
Earplugs. Yeah, so do I. Not all the time. I need to be better about it, but they're always with me. You know, they're in the bag, so that counts a little bit more, I guess, than if I don't have them. But it's a really big thing. So when they're little, they're just so much more sensitive. So if you can set up some sort of room that is either on site, super nearby, that maybe it's across the hall, or if you're in a hotel ballroom that it's like in one of the rooms upstairs or in a hospitality suite that these kids can go play in, that is super wonderful. So the parents still have their space to play, or that the parents have their space to play, to do whatever they want to do. But the kiddos are nearby and there's like a babysitter or somebody in there, some sort of caretaker in there watching over them for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody remembers watching like this past Summer Olympics, right? The one with swimming and everything. What year was that? 2016? I don't remember.
It has to be 2018 because the Summer Olympics would have been this year, but they're pushing it so that Summer Olympics. Oh wait, no, Summer Olympics are every 4 years. I'm sorry, I think you're right. 2016. Sorry.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So I remember like, Michael Phelps was there and he had his son, who was like an itty bitty tiny little baby. And they would always show the baby in the stands with, the mama. And this baby had these like cute little noise canceling headphones on. There was like a big elastic band that went around the kid's head and these big giant muffs that were on top of the kid's ears. Very similar thing you'll see a lot of times at weddings, right? And maybe that's kind of like a cute gift if you want to encourage people to bring their kiddos and have fun. Or if somebody says we can't find a babysitter and you just say, hey, bring your kiddos along. Here's a cute little gift. If you'd have to ask them first, if kids came along, would you bring them? Or if we said it was okay, would you bring your kiddos and would you still be able to come? Maybe that's a cute little gift that you can buy them and say, here, we'd love for you to still make it. Here's these noise canceling headphones so you can still make it. We'd love to see your face, right? Or something like that,
I love that. Yeah. I think moral of the story is talk to the parents about what the kids might need. Obviously, you can't accommodate every little thing, and some parents may be a little bit more pushy on that than others. But, do they need a high chair? Can you get them a babysitter that just watches all the kids? Does that simplify the problem? Maybe for a new mom, do they need a room to pump or to feed for their little ones? So little things like that you can do for your guest are ways that stick with guests for a really long time, that they go, wow, like they really cared about making the experience for all of us that much better. Because yes, this day is about you, but as Dan and I say all the time, it's your party for everyone else. So what you can do, those little things that you can do, even just reaching out like, hey, mama, do you need a high chair? Or, hey, dad, do you think you're going to need a high chair for your little one? Or, what kind of, we're thinking about doing mac and cheese for the kids. Do you think your little one would like that? Or help me out here. Those little things go a really, really long way for sure. There is also talk sometimes, some of my clients say, should we do a kids table? Where they kind of take all of the kiddos that are coming to the wedding and say, instead of making them sit with their parents, boo-hoo boring, we're going to sit them all at one table together. Dan's making a face for those of you that are not watching this video. Dan, why are you making a face?
That just sounds, in theory, it sounds sweet, right? Like have all the kids together is going to be super adorable.
So fun.
But no, out of sight, out of mind, right? Like, it's a recipe for disaster. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I think at a certain age, it becomes okay. Like, if they're more in their teens, by all means, go for it.
Totally.
But if you have a lot of kids that are under 10 years of age, I don't recommend a kids table because a lot of kids still require assistance with, like, eating their food or cutting their food. And I think by and large, there's certainly some parents who are cool to just let their kids go off and do whatever they want, and that's certainly fine. But more often than not, I would say it's probably stresses out a parent a little bit if their kid's at another table, because now they're just having to get up, go over and be like, hey, you got to eat. Hey, you got to, all right, let me cut your food. And then they're trying to kind of manage all those things. Most often, like I said, unless they're older kids, in which case that is, if they're self-sufficient, that's a totally different story. But I usually say keep the child with their parents or whoever that they're attending with throughout dinner. After that, the kids are going to do whatever they want, and it's all fine. The kids are able to stay there, though, through dinner and still have a really great time the rest of the night with the other kids that are there at the wedding, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Time out. So we're about to hop on to number 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My Regina's like losing her shit up there. So I'm going to go get her. Yeah, okay. She's like you can. Yeah, she's like nuts.
Cool.
Yeah, so she's breathing fire. I'm gonna go get her, and I'm just gonna hold her, and we'll finish the episode.
Yeah, all good. I'm gonna still talk to myself, and I'm gonna see what these text messages are about. Oh, it's my mom and my sister. Speak of the devil. Hi, Mom. Yay. So, fun story for you guys. Every time we record, I turn off all the notifications so that I don't see them and get distracted as we record. But I still see the little like red icon number, and I'm not a person that carries a lot of unread emails ever in my inbox. And I'm seeing 12 right now. So, that's scary. Not scary. Now I'm checking it. Oh, and I have a little pup at my feet. Actually, here. Come here, Cooper. Come here, bud. Come here. There he is. Can you guys see this guy? There's a Cooper. He's standing at my feet. He normally stands right by me all day long, right? You're a good boy. Nobody's on the screen, right? Yeah. He's a snuggly bug. He's been loving all of everybody being at home, right? Yeah, you're my buddy. Oh!
Yeah.
Hey. I have my little boy. You have your little girl.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. There's a belly. Who's got a belly? Who's got a belly sticking out? Look at that belly. Look at that big old belly sticking out. Big old belly.
I feel like I could lift my shirt up and mine looks really similar right now with all my stress eating and snacking.
That's what we're all doing.
Are you good to keep video on for this?
Yep. Let's make it happen. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
Whatever.
Just checking. Cool. All right. So let's finish out this episode with talking about the idea that if you're not having kids at the wedding, right?
Yep, and preparing for that.
Yeah, exactly. And we talked about it a little bit before, but I think really just to kind of summarize with it, it's about, being sure to make it clear who is and isn't invited on your invitations. That is like step number one. The clearer you can get on those invites, the less of a hassle per se that you're going to have to navigate as you go through getting the RSVPs and people assuming who is and isn't invited. I think you can also use words like adult only reception. For the most part, that makes it as clear as possible, but honestly, you're still going to have people assuming that their kid is still invited.
I really like the seat number trick, like where you put, you're right, like Miss Danielle Pasternak and guest, right? But then on the response card, you'll say like, blank of 2 attending or blank of 4 attending, right?
Right.
And
or you can put, we've reserved 2 seats in your honor.
Right.
And then it's very clear who those seats would go to, Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. I think it's one of those things. I had mentioned it earlier. Definitely episode 77 about how to set boundaries. We get into this quite a bit with what to do, but it comes down to if they're going to RSVP and just assume that the child is coming, if they are not invited, it comes down to just calling them, talking to them. Dan is a big proponent of getting on the horn and just having like a real honest to goodness conversation. I think it's okay that you don't have to make an exemption just because they didn't follow the rules. You know what I mean? Don't feel like, well, I don't want to start a fight and I don't want to do this, because otherwise what happens is all those other people who did follow the rules are going to see that child there and be like, well, wait a second, what's wrong with my kid that their kids could come, but ours couldn't, right? You're just kind of setting yourself up for more future drama per se, depending on who your family is.
I think you can do things like setting up like a specific room, setting up a specific room for maybe there's a babysitter, right? And you've just got like a little babysitter room where, if maybe you're just able to eliminate a decision for people, right? They've all got to figure out their own daycare or whatever. Maybe you just hire 1 or 2 different babysitters or somebody who needs a little extra cash on the side, and they just hang out in one of the rooms close by, or maybe it's a room at the hotel that you're at or something like that that's close by, and you drop the kids off there, and they're there for 4 hours or whatever, and you've got games and snacks and cookies and whatever, and you go from there.
Right, you've got the iPad with like movies, and there's so much technology right now that kids, not to stick a kid in front of an iPad, but at a certain point they're going to get a little tired. Throw a movie on and let them all like tucker out, fall asleep. I think it's a ton of fun for sure. Yeah, and I think that definitely allows them to still attend, but gives them an option that the child does not necessarily have to be part of the festivities, if you will. So like we said in the beginning, or at some point throughout this podcast, at this point, I forget when I sent it, but just the same as you ask people to respect your request for no children, you also have to respect their decision to not attend if they can't attend as a family. And I think that's just kind of what it comes down to, is that mutual respect across the board. It is okay to not have kids at your wedding. It's okay to have kids at your wedding. Only you can really make that decision. But yeah. So,
yeah.